The story for this week, the main thing I want to dive into now that we're done covering movies is the writers' strike and how the Alliance for Motion Pictures and Television Producers, or the studios, this AMPTP, you could say that, but let's just say the studios, the corporations that are refusing to bargain with the writers in good faith, and the same group that is supposed to bargain with the actors but have not since they first went on strike back in June. We now have this story coming out from the Hollywood Reporter and other outlets saying that the studios have hired a new crisis PR firm as the strikes go on. As talks with the Writers Guild of America stall, the Studio Trade Association has retained a DC based firm called the Levinson Group to pursue a fresh messaging strategy. A fresh messaging strategy. So, what is this signal? I think it very clearly suggests to me that they recognize that they are losing in the court of public opinion, which is the most important. If there's going to be any pressure brought to bear, like not only does the Writers Guild have to deal with getting people helping them survive, right? Because it's been a long time since many of the members have been able to cut any sort of paychecks. And there's a strike fund that it's doing its best to try and help the members get through this tough time. But if you're going to break their resolve, you have to convince the public that they're being unreasonable on these questions that are known, but just for the sake of the conversation, we are talking about residuals, we're talking about artificial intelligence and how corporations can use your likeness, and we're talking about the way that streaming services, that goes back to residuals, but in a broader sense, how streaming services have fundamentally upended the way that people get paid in the business and transformed it. And so you have to convince the public that the demands of these writers are unreasonable, that they're out of touch, and that they don't have some connection to the working class. Certainly, you see in sectors of the conservative press and maybe some pockets of corporate media an effort to try and separate them from the interests of, let's say, truck drivers or people who are working in the auto industry or railroad workers, and perhaps they're in more financial have more financial security than those individuals. There's something to their job that is perhaps not as arduous of labor. However, as has been shared and the myths have been exploded, people have come to learn that there are thousands upon thousands of writers that don't qualify for health insurance that are actually lucky to make 25 to 30K a year doing what they do. And if they don't have that script that has landed and made it become a big hit, they first off don't really have a shot at getting paid more. But also, even in that case, you've got examples like with the bear where the money runs out very quickly, and the residuals that should be coming in when people discover your show and are watching it regularly, those are going back to the streaming services. So they hired this crisis firm, and it's got offices in London, New York, and DC. And the kind of people that are working at the Levinson Group are the people you might imagine, but they aren't just straight up out there to like whitewash the corporation. They're a little bit, so this is more like in the realm of a like, Get Out, to go back to my reference, where these people don't on the surface look like they would be against you, but beneath their exterior, there is something going on that has to be challenged. And so, the strategic communications firm that claims to have global reach is compiled of people from corporate news. It's compiled of people from CBS, CNBC, CNN, You got people from government positions like the FDA, the Export Import Bank, and there's Wall Street Journal. There's people from the Department of Justice and the United States Senate. And by and large, these are mostly like public relations consultants or public uh, people who were spokespersons for offices. One of them is Abby McDonough, who worked for Heidi Heitkamp, and she's a corporate Democrat who's no longer in office. And then, uh, look at the people who come from these different corporate news outlets. These are people who have experience covering certain news, and then I think it's fair to say that they recognize that they can go parlay their skills and make more money by being a crisis communications firm that corporations would retain. And so these studios are taking them on and hoping that they can shift their messaging and in some way take on the writers and be able to overcome what is what they see happening, and maybe shift it in such a way that they would be able to successfully get them to come to the table and accept their offer. They put forward an offer that the writers find insulting and they're not going to accept it. And so now apparently the studios don't want to compromise any more on their position, and they're bringing this in. As it says, the firm is led by Molly Levinson, a former political director at CNN and CBS. She's a turned strategic advisor for corporate clients with reputational and risk concerns. She's also known for her work on behalf of the restaurant Comet Ping Pong, countering Pizzagate, as well as the U.S. women's national soccer team in its campaign for pay equity. It also, this is going to be in addition to the consultants they already retain, Chris Day, who's a communications head, and then Scott Rowe, who has done messaging for Warner Brothers. So this this is one in which eventually they usually turn to people who have connections in the world of Democrats to try and marshal an end to this. It mentions that during the 2007-08 Writers Guild stoppage, the association brought on Chris Lehane and Mark Fabiani, the Democratic Party operatives, who had also previously done work for the Screen Actors Guild in 2002 during its impasse with the Association of Talent Agents. The studios aren't alone in enlisting new PR reinforcements for the current standoff. SAG-AFTRA has hired Precision Strategies, led by Stephanie Cutter, who served as a deputy campaign manager for Barack Obama's 2012 presidential run. But at least in that case, that corporate person or the one that comes from an establishment group is representing the actors in their efforts against the studios. So um, we'll see what this does. I think if anything, it just sends a signal to the writers about how serious the studios are in coming to their side. And if they're not willing to budge, then they're hoping that they can wage a war in the press that will get the writers to a table and get them to settle for something less than what would be a fair contract. So